dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerf Herder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Christina Yojimbo Henry. You can continue. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. All right, so that's how we begin.
Let's go.
Hello, everybody. Was that a turkey that I heard at the opening of this episode?
No, I already shot him and ate him.
Happy Thanksgiving to all. We hope that you are with loved ones this week. And if you are listening to this while you're traveling, thank you and safe travels.
If you're traveling, that's multiple episodes you can listen to.
Exactly. Yes. And this is the most traveled holiday of the year. So
I'm not
take
going
advantage.
this year.
We've got 250 some odd episodes at your disposal, all for free. So yes, please.
It's going to cost you a 5-star review, please.
Or just tell your friends.
Tell your friends.
Yeah. We really like that.
So longtime listeners will know that we do this episode on an annual basis. This is our monster marathon. Not really a marathon because we always do 2 movies, but
double creature feature.
It's a double creature feature.
Fifth.
Our fifth annual. We've actually, this was in deference to that old WOR staple, Channel 9 here in the New York, New Jersey area, which Jeff and I still inhabit, and Christina used to, at least. But they used to, on Thanksgiving and the day after Thanksgiving, play Godzilla movies and King Kong movies. So we are honoring that tradition, and that's why we do this every year. Unfortunately, we've run out of the actual movies that they used to play.
So what happens when you're on the air for 5 years?
But there's plenty of other fish in the sea. There's more Godzilla films. There's more King Kong movies. And there's more monster movies in general that we can touch upon. But this year, we are still sticking to Godzilla and King Kong. And we are starting with a movie that I know as Godzilla versus the Sea Monster, which is how it was released to American television in 1968. It never actually got a U.S. theatrical release. But in Japan and internationally, it is known as Ebirah Horror of the Deep. So it is named after Godzilla's adversary, which is rare. I think only Ghidorah, however you want to say it, is the only other monster that ever had that distinction of having a movie named after it.
Rare honor.
That's what we're talking about today first. And we're following that up with another Toho extravaganza, King Kong Escapes. And as we will discuss, these movies are somewhat tied together in an interesting fashion. But I do want to point out right away that this is the first time I've had the pleasure of watching a movie off of the big Criterion Godzilla box set. This is the first movie that I have graced upon my Blu-ray player from that collection. And it happens to be this one. So, we'll get into it. This was...
we got thoughts.
We're going to have to go through all the Godzilla films eventually. But I think that the crispness and clarity of Blu-ray reveals some of the limitations a bit more than they were revealed in their relatively crappy TV broadcasts. And I think that this one more so, because I think the suit that they used is in really, really bad shape. And you can really tell from some of these shots, especially the underwater shots, you can tell that there's rips, there's tears going on. I see foam coming out of the suit in a couple of places.
Wow. You're talking about the Godzilla suit.
The Godzilla suit, yes.
I always got the impression that they used a new one every year.
No.
Not necessarily the case. They do recycle these things.
They recycle.
I can't imagine that they're cheap.
Let's remember that Toho is the studio that also sponsored Akira Kurosawa, and Kurosawa was notorious for going over budget, so there was no budget left for Godzilla films.
So it's Kurosawa's fault.
Probably. I'm sure it is.
Blame Kurosawa. I should have a t-shirt that says that. Yeah.
And that even though these were big money makers for Toho, they seem to spend less and less money on these films.
Yeah, they did. Well, they cranked them out. They cranked them out year after year. So you can't waste time by making 3 brand new kaiju. You know, you make one, which is the giant lobster that is Ebirah, and then recycle the Godzilla versus Monster Zero, as I know it, from the previous year.
Well, even the Condor, I think, was a repurposed.
Was Rodan? It was a Rodan model.
I'm sure, because I thought it was Eon from Rudolph's Shiny New Year.
Well played. Man. Well played.
Frank Gorshin.
Directed by Jun Fukuda, not directed by Inchiro Honda.
Yeah, and that was controversial.
Mm-hmm. So right up front, before we even talk about this movie plot-wise, this originated as a King Kong movie. This was supposed to be King Kong.
This was absolutely fascinating that this was a Kong movie.
And it makes sense.
Scenes, when he's oogling up that girl, that island girl, you're like, yeah, that's a Kong move right there.
Well, I don't know if that's the right word to use. She's more or less putting him to sleep. You know, it's not. I don't think he cares much one way or the other about the girl. But Kong would have. They basically supplanted Godzilla in this script in place of Kong, and you can tell. Okay, let's get into the history of this movie. Toho's deal with RKO, and yes, they made a deal with RKO. They had to make King Kong versus Godzilla, right, to use that character. Part of that deal was they had 5 years to use the character. And for reasons unbeknownst to us, they chose not to for several years until this movie came up. And this was going to be a co-production between Toho and Rankin and Bass, who were coming up with their own Kong animated series at the time. So they were co-funding this picture. So they were partners in this. The story goes is that Rankin and Bass wanted Honda, the team of director Inchiro Honda, and Ijai, how do you pronounce his first name? I don't want to massacre it.
It's Eiji. Yeah.
Eiji Surabaya, who was the master of special effects of these types of movies. So they wanted the team of Honda and Surabaya, did Rankin and Bass. And Toho, gotta love them, always cutting costs, did not want to go that route. They wanted to use a different director and a different special effects supervisor. And Rankin and Bass balked at this and walked. So Toho liked the script so much, we don't have to make a King Kong movie. We can just put Godzilla in the script and make the same movie. And that's exactly what they did. So you can tell in certain scenes, because they already established in King Kong versus Godzilla that Kong is attracted to lightning. That's what they used to wake up Godzilla. Although I think, to be fair, anybody would get woken up by a bolt of lightning.
Yes, yeah. And they're like, what do we got to lose?
That's not a real stretch. And as Jeff mentioned, there's a scene where Godzilla sits and looks at the female lead of the picture, which would have been more of a concession to Kong and his love of the ladies.
Although in the Gojira verse, no island is complete without a beautiful native girl.
True.
They run rampant.
Played by a Japanese actress always.
Yes.
Dio, is that her name? Dio?
That's her name in the film. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I love these literal translations, because it was called, when it was released in Japan, Godzilla, Ebirah, Mothra. Big duel in the South Seas.
That was the title?
That's the title.
It's Gojira, Ebirah, Mothra, Nangtai no Daketo. Yeah.
I read that when it was Kong set to start, the title was Operation Robinson Crusoe, King Kong versus Ebirah.
That is correct, but they changed the name to put in Godzilla. And then internationally, I guess, is where it became known as Ebirah, Horror of the Deep.
Horror.
Interesting if you look at those titles, the Japanese titles, a lot of times it's like they're trying to tell you your favorite character is going to be in this film.
Right.
Even though Mothra is really only in like the last 10 minutes of
So
they're trying to sell you on the Mothra to make you go to the
on
film.
IMDb, you want to know what the description of this movie is? Godzilla teams up with his old nemesis Mothra to do battle against a giant lobster controlled by a sinister totalitarian group. None of that is true. They don't team up. And
Not really.
The lobster is not controlled by anybody.
Mothra never even encounters the lobster at all in the movie.
She's sleeping half the time.
They all sleep a lot, these monsters.
Listen, I would think that they're I mean, that's a lot of energy to get
to walk around like that. It's true.
I like how Gojira sleeps on his stomach like a puppy.
He can sleep apparently on the toilet because that's where he looks like he's sitting.
He's on his throne.
But it opens. There's always the human element to these movies. They have yet to make a kaiju only human free movie. There's always got to be characters. You got to
put the human element.
Always got to. And I hate
Otherwise, how are you going to connect with these monsters?
As a kid, I'm like, I don't want to see this. I don't care.
Well, I did read that out of this movie, this Godzilla's got more screen time than all of his other movies up to this point.
Are you serious?
Yes, that's what I read. That doesn't mean it's true, but the film has the most screen time for Godzilla out of all the 8 1960s Godzilla films.
And it's probably the worst suit that they could have possibly used, barring Son of Godzilla.
But back then, I mean, we're watching on a little 12-inch, probably black and white console television. Yeah,
this is true. Yeah, this is what I was saying before. Yeah,
fall apart when you clean it up, and it suddenly is a giant on screen. We all got 75-inch 4K televisions now. It's not kind when
there's a couple of scenes where you can actually see the mesh.
Yes, I was going to bring that up.
Godzilla.
You can see the guy's eyes when he's jumping off into the water.
The plot, as threadbare as it is, opens up with, and I didn't write down any of the characters' names. I'm sorry.
I got Nita, Yoshimura, and Ryota.
Right. Nita and Ichino are the two dancers from the dance marathon. Ryota is the boy who's looking for his brother Yata. And Yoshimura is the thief.
Yeah, who just happens to be hiding out in
the yacht. They think he's the yacht owner. Yata is missing at sea. He was on a fishing boat that has been lost in the South Sea. But in the very beginning of the movie, you see his family going to a psychic, and the psychic says that he is still alive.
Now give me my shekels.
So his brother wants to go out and find him, but problem is he has no boat. He goes to the authorities and they're like, yeah, right. A psychic is telling you this. We're not expending a boat. We don't have any boats to go out looking for your brother. So as he's waiting in the police waiting room, I don't know who the marketing genius is for the dance marathon that posted in the police station, but that's where he sees the poster for the dance marathon. Hey, that's where you're going to find your best
dancers.
And hey, you win a yacht. You win a yacht.
I know exactly what I need.
Yeah. But, I do know that Japan is an ocean-based,
That is true. Yeah. How else
you're on an island there, but still, is that like the best prize?
I get my own bullet train? Nice.
So he goes, and it's a nice little set piece where you're introduced to these other two guys who are members. I don't know if they have partners or they just
they're there to win the yacht.
They're there with each other. They're there to win the yacht. So they're at a 3-day dance marathon contest. And they don't make it to the end. We never see who does.
There's only 15 left. Come on.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever seen, as a side note, the Jane Fonda film, They Shoot Horses,
yes.
Don't They?
Yeah.
I always think of that as soon as, if I see anything related to dance marathon.
Dance marathons.
So all that is just a device to get these characters together. Nobody wins the dance marathon. Nobody wins the yacht.
Yeah. No.
So
why even do that when you can just steal one?
The two dance guys go to the little brother. They say, oh, you want a yacht so bad? We'll show you a yacht. Come drive with us. So they drive off along the coast. They find a dock with a bunch of yachts. They break into one of them, but they find that they're not alone. There's who they think is the owner has a rifle on them and says to him, oh, just stay the night here. We've established that I'm going to shoot you if you try to mess with any of my stuff here.
Right.
But stay the night, then you can get lost the next morning.
This is so stupid. None of them are aware of the fact that they're now out to sea.
Right. So they wake up and they're out to sea for several hours because little brother wants to find big brother and he's on a mission.
He's on a mission, man.
Yeah.
Find his brother. Listen, she told him he was alive. Just got to search.
Mm-hmm. And this is where we're introduced to Ebirah
Mm-hmm.
And this is great. This is actually, in terms of special effects, I was ripping apart the Godzilla suit earlier, but this is one of my favorite shots, monster shots in all of Godzilla filmdom, is when you see the giant claw come out, and that's all you see before you see the rest of him emerge from the water. It's a nice shot because some of the model work, is obvious, especially when the boats are in his claw.
Right.
But some of this is actually very nicely done. And I love the shot of the claw.
I agree with you. So first of all, this is the first time I've ever seen this. I have never come across this. This was brand new to me. And I think it is unique because 98% of those shots you got, the monsters are stomping on city skylines and knocking over crap, or they're fighting each other. And you don't really get a sense of scale. Yeah, maybe he picks up a boat or something. But here you're literally seeing these little guys in a rowboat, in their little canoe getting away. And so you get the scale, you get the size of the claw with these guys, as you shish kebabs them or whatever. So it's cool. It's neat. I thought it was unique that you get a true sense of the scale of these things, even though, it's a guy in a suit and that's a little tiny model. As a kid, even as a grown adult, it's still a fun scene. Exactly like you said, the claw comes out. And I like the fact that the whole design of Ebirah with the smaller claw and the big one, at least it's a little closer to like what a real lobster is. Initially you're like, wow, I want 2 giant claws. Let's go all in. He's a fun design.
So they are spared. They're not killed, any of the inhabitants of the yacht, because Ebirah does pick it up in his giant claw, but they're all washed overboard, and they end up the next morning on a remote island, which is later named Devil's Island by one of the characters. And they realize they're not alone there.
They
either.
refer to it as an infant island.
Infant Island is the adjacent island where Mothra lives.
Yes, and that's where they are drawing their slave labor from.
Yes.
Okay. The natives of Infant Island.
Yes. Okay. All right.
So our intrepid team finds that they're not alone, that there's soldiers on this island that they've washed up on, who come in and out in a boat that is spraying this mysterious yellow liquid that's staining the ocean around it. And I thought this was funny because when it's a model shot, you see the yellow liquid, but when it's the actual boat, there's no yellow liquid.
No. That's just butter to keep him away from the shoreline. Giant lobsters cannot handle butter. They're like, I'm out, dude.
So what they see is these mystery soldiers bringing in natives. And as Christina just said, these are captives from Infant Island. This terrorist organization that's taken over this island as their hideout are called the Red Bamboo. And they're trying to make a nuclear weapon on this island. Yeah, and they're using the natives not to make that weapon, but to make the juice that keeps Ebirah away from them when they're coming in and out. Convoluted in the way of plot. And a bunch of the natives try to escape as they are coming onto the island. They get in a conveniently placed boat. They go off into the ocean and they're attacked right away by Ebirah, who eats them. He shish kebabs them on one of his claws.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a fun scene, actually.
I would think that
they had to die, but
that's a very insubstantial dinner for this giant
Yeah, you
lobster.
Would think you would need a lot of it. That's like eating krill. It's like, dude, send me some more.
And this is the most sensitive lobster. He can sense when a little rowboat is going above him, and he shows up immediately.
He's got nothing better to do.
I guess he doesn't. He doesn't. He patrols the island.
Yes. So what is this? The Red Bamboo? These guys are called?
The Red Bamboo. Yes.
Yes. And yeah, it looked like a set from Thunderbirds made out of Legos, but it's still fun.
It is.
Akihiko Hirata is the captain, and you guys should recognize him. I think of him as like the face of Toho. Was Dr. Sarazawa in the original.
Yeah.
Well, he's got an eye patch.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
and he's in every Godzilla movie, really.
Yeah.
As some other character.
And so is the other guy, his boss. The big gruff guy with the mustache. He's in like half the Godzilla movies as well. I don't know what.
Is there any through line on some of these movies? Like we find Godzilla later. And he's just sleeping in this cave.
I think in the earlier movies, tried to set up where Godzilla ends is kind of where where he emerges.
Right.
But again, since this was a King Kong movie, it doesn't really make sense with the previous.
Yeah. But like Mothra dies in every movie.
Yeah, and Mothra like goes from being a pupa to the moth to the
And you got the
pupa to
little eggs,
twins at one point.
Yeah.
So yeah, what Mothra is this?
Speaking of
exactly?
twins, where are these little people coming from? And why are they always dressed like TWA 60s sky captains, the little flight attendants?
You mean the Peanuts?
The little girls.
The little girls. Yeah, they were a singing team called the Peanuts in real life.
Peanuts.
But they weren't actually that size.
They're not that big. Oh, they're not that big.
They're not. Maybe Christina knows this. I don't know if this was the Peanuts or if they were the duo that were in Mothra. If this is another duo.
Yeah,
okay.
it's different girls.
Okay.
What cracks me up is that they have very high hair. You know, someone's been
taller.
in there with a comb.
It's like, hold still. Those little people, their parents, their Peanuts.
Well, the actresses are called Pair Bambi, and it's these two Japanese singers, Yuko and Yoko Okada.
So those are the actresses.
Yeah, but they're not in the original Mothra.
Yeah, the characters are.
The characters are, but those particular actresses are not.
Oh, I didn't realize it's always the same. So there's only two of these little girls known to man.
Apparently so. They are the caretakers of Mothra in these movies, these two little girls.
Okay.
So yeah, we don't know what their lineage is or their family history is. We just know that there's two tiny little women that take care of Mothra.
And they can't seem to wake him up.
No.
Mothra's like, dude,
and Mothra only wakes up when they stop the song. Not when they're singing the song.
Yeah, it's like, mommy's singing me a lullaby. I'm going to sleep. No,
right. And again, it's like they're having a dance marathon on Infant Island because they're doing this nonstop.
Yes.
To wake Mothra.
So they were trying to wake Mothra before our heroes get to the island because they want to rescue their people that have been taken as prisoner to Devil's Island by the Red Bamboo.
Mothra don't care.
Well, I think Mothra cares. Mothra is the only kaiju that cares.
Not enough to wake up.
Mothra's a savior. Always a savior. Mothra's always a good character.
Always sacrificing herself for the better good.
So Dio is the girl. She escapes while she takes advantage of the death of her two brethren to escape herself from the Red Bamboo.
Thanks, guys.
And she runs into our other protagonists and she joins them. Of course, just like in every other movie, these natives speak Japanese, so they can communicate no problem.
Hey, listen, I do like the fact that you find out that, that this guy's looking for his brother. And she goes, wait, there's a Japanese on my island named Yada. And he's like, how old is he? And it's like, how old is he? How many Japanese people named Yada are out there?
He's about 40. Wrong guy.
Yada. It's like, how old is he? Really? Come on.
So the Red Bamboo, they realize that they're out there, and there's a couple of sequences where they hunt them on the island, and that's where our heroes hide in a cave. And they find the sleeping Godzilla, which would have been the sleeping King Kong. If this,
I don't know who it would be worse to find, Godzilla
King Kong or Godzilla.
Kong. Yeah. I mean, if I crawl into a cave and it's like there's a sleeping giant kaiju, I'm like, tiptoe out of here real quick.
After they find Godzilla, they sneak into the Red Bamboo's lair.
Red Bamboo.
To see, I guess, to scope out the territory, to see who they are and why they're on the island. So they walk with a bush, a moving bush to get to the front.
It's the Macbeth trick. So if you've ever seen Macbeth, the Birnam Wood walks to Dunsinane, the end of the play, and that's how the soldiers hide the army. From Macbeth, and Kurosawa's version of Macbeth, Throne of Blood, had come out at this point, so maybe somebody just loved that movie.
Maybe. It's a clever move. They're like, well, I'll never see this bush moving. I did find it disconcerting, those lab coats that had short sleeves. I'm like, something weird looking.
Not really protective.
No, correct. I mean, what's the point of wearing a lab coat if my arms are not protected from the corrosive acid and atomic waste that I'm dealing with?
And Dio has apparently used this subterfuge before, because she brings a dove of peace to throw off the guards, because they think that they see that bush moving and they train their lights on it. But she throws the bird and like, it's just a bird that was moving that bush. That's all.
You should see her card tricks.
And this guy is probably the best safe cracker on the face of the earth, because he opens the atomic safe. In less than 10 seconds, he's in there.
He should be.
I think there'd be like a couple
Ocean's
more
13,
safeguards.
right?
Yeah.
On the,
Listen,
on
if
a-
you made it this far, you're in. That's fine.
Yeah. They discovered the red bamboo at this point. That's what they're there for, is they need a desolate location so they can build their evil weapons. And they also find a bunch of smoke bombs as well, which they take.
Yeah, that'll come in handy.
And Dio finds a nice big necklace to wear, which also comes in handy a little bit later. So as they're escaping, they get separated. One of the guys gets captured and gets thrown in with the Infant Islanders that are also prisoners of the red bamboo. And Ryota gets stuck to a weather balloon or something, some random thing.
What is going on with this weather balloon?
He gets caught up in the ropes on this balloon and he gets carried away. And the balloon, conveniently enough, brings him straight over to Infant Island, the adjacent island, where he discovers his brother. There's Yatta.
They are reunited.
Yep, they're reunited.
I love it.
And
I like the soundtrack going on here.
Oh,
Very
Christina,
kind of
I'm gonna hand that one over to you about the soundtrack.
Yeah, Masaru Sato, who, again, the Kurosawa connection, he had become well known for doing Kurosawa's films. He was a protege of the original composer who worked on Kurosawa's films. We've watched Hidden Fortress on this show. He did the music for that. He did the music for Yojimbo.
Oh, yeah.
And he's got such a fun style. You can always tell when he's doing the music for the Gojira films because his style is so playful. It's very contemporary.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Ebirah's got a very guitar strum kind of theme going on whenever he shows up.
What was funny is that at one point, because of the music, my son was watching this with us, and when Godzilla emerges, he's like, "Is Godzilla going to go surfing?" Because that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it does. And even when he first confronts Ebirah, it looks like a dance-off because Godzilla is shaking his arms and his hips, and there's this sort of, almost like a surfer theme playing. So it looks like they're actually dancing, having a dance-off, going back to the dance marathon.
Yep. There is a theme going on.
After they do the volleyball with the rock.
Yeah, this is one that probably doesn't hold up in high res.
Mm-hmm.
No, it does not. Well, I don't think that one even held up on my crappy little 10-inch TV.
Cartoon hand-drawn black rock.
But after they escape the red bamboo and Ryota gets floated away and then the other guy gets captured, our heroes are kind of like, what do we do now? They slink back to their cave and one of them has the great idea, let's wake up Godzilla. Imagine the trouble that they would have if Godzilla was stomping around here.
How bad could this be?
Yeah.
They jumpstart him like a dead battery Buick.
And then the thief, who is the safecracker, who is like the father figure to this gang, well, he's going to kill us too. Not if we get out of his way. Don't be negative about this.
We just employ that moving bush trick again. He won't see us.
So that's what they do. So they take Dio's wire that she had around her neck and they connect it to the sword that they set up that they found when they first washed up on the island.
Yeah, he finds a machete. He's like, "Oh, they're cannibals." Like, what? How are you making that connection? So
they stick the sword on the top of the cliff. They run the wire down so it's dangling right above what looks like Godzilla's eyelashes. They wake him up. He wakes up. He opens his eyes because they hear first. I guess they thought he was dead because they don't even realize he's alive until they hear his heartbeat. And then they have the idea of waking him up.
Let's just jumpstart him. Yeah.
So he wakes up. He breaks out of the mountain. So I guess there's no more cave that they can hide in after that. And then he has the initial fight with Ebirah. Now, this is again where we were just talking about the back and forth with the boulder, the tennis match that they have, which ends up destroying one of the guard sentries at the red bamboo.
So that worked out.
It did work out. Yeah. It did work out. There's a bit of a battle. Godzilla fries Ebirah. Ebirah kind of runs away and goes to lick his wounds after that. And then Godzilla stomps around and decides to investigate the red bamboo himself. So this is at the same time we're going back to Infant Island. Yatta and how do they get back to Devil's Island? Those two guys.
They go on the boat.
On the boat. That's right. That's right.
They actually give them the yellow liquid that they need to go safely past Ebirah. And then there's a storm that comes up, of course, when the island is within sight, and they actually lose all the provisions. And the stuff that they need. So they crash, on the island, basically swimming to shore at the end. And they somehow have managed to make it safely past, but it's sort of a miracle.
Yeah, because that's
It's
right.
a miracle, all right.
Because they're like, you're crazy. The Islanders are telling them you're crazy, but here's some stuff to try to get you past the monster. And they tell them when you get there, tell them to make a big net. And we're like, well, how big is big? Is it like 12 inches? Is he
just right?
And then Yatta says, well, for what? Oh, you'll know later.
Can you please give me a clue here? What are we using this net for?
So at this point, the infant Islanders are still trying to wake up Mothra, which doesn't happen until the very last minute. When
Mothra's having none of this.
When she's most needed. And now you also get scenes of the infant Islanders on Devil's Island that have decided to build a fake batch of this liquid. So they're really going to get the red bamboo now. Let's give them some liquid that doesn't work. And that's how they get them. And so the infant Islanders do get their revenge. So Godzilla comes, stomps on the red bamboo until they've actually decided to evacuate and self-destruct the island. With
2 hours self-destruct, by the way.
With the atomic bomb. And now this was like right out of the end of Alien, this device that where Ripley sets the Nostromo to self-destruct.
Now I got to get back.
So all you have to do is to stop the self-destruct, one of the dying scientists says, is to turn the button on this device, this nozzle. But because Godzilla's stomping around, the room is collapsed and they can't quite reach it, and it's retracting. The guy's only like an inch away from his finger, but he can't reach it. So they now have to get off the island before this whole thing blows. And while this is happening, you get the final battle between Godzilla and Ebirah.
This is high drama right here.
And this is where you get the reveal of the suit, all the inconsistencies of the suit, because I guess they had used it in the previous outing and they didn't really have time to fix it up that much. And whenever you put these suits in water, it really became waterlogged. And you can kind of tell the suit is very loose fitting. It's
a sponge. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
180 pounds.
So it's during this scene where you can really see it. If you're looking under the arms, you can see like tears and what's underneath the skin of Godzilla. It's really bad. But Godzilla actually kills the giant lobster. And now this was pretty cool because I never really knew how they did this as a kid, because you see Godzilla get dragged under the water by Ebirah at one point. And so it looks, for all intents and purposes, like they're fighting underwater. But apparently they filmed this through an aquarium. They filmed the two actors, and it looks good. It looks pretty good.
Yeah, it does. They're moving like they're moving through water. So that's what really sells it.
So, but he tears off his claw. And I'm like, that is where all the sweet meat is. So that's good move on your part there, guys.
Now talk about like a Kong-esque kind of a thing. He plays with the claw, which is what Kong does. Yes, and even the new movies, even the Skull Island movie, he does that with the skull crushers or whatever.
We didn't even talk about the Condor attack, which is very reminiscent of the Kong versus the pterodactyl in the original movie.
Yes, you're right. So
there was a lot of it makes sense when you realize that, just swap out Godzilla for Kong.
Well, especially when the planes start coming in at the end, when the red bamboo orders the reinforcements, right? And the planes start coming in, and you're like, this is just clearly such a Kong moment.
But this is also when you talk about the soundtrack. This is like, this moment is just maybe half an hour in. I'm like, this may be my favorite Godzilla movie ever now. Like it's just the soundtrack is just fun. And especially during that plane sequence when they're being attacked, it's funky. Like it's got a funky beat going on to it, It's funny. Your son mentioned that, he's going to go hang 10. He's going to go surfing. That's exactly what it feels like. You're like, it's not taking itself too seriously. But what is the move with Godzilla when he puts his finger aside his nose?
Well, the condor just pecked the crap out of his face, so he's probably like, ow.
I just literally turns the camera and he does his little side, like a little Santa Claus thing, and I'm like,
he puts one finger to his nose. I think just because he was like, he was hurting. He was like,
it looked like he was rubbing his
Okay,
face, like
I
it
got
rubs
some like it was
down.
some secret message that I should have
Yeah.
realized what was going on. It's like a call to action. Godzilla wants me to go eat some red bamboo. I don't know.
Aside from the music, I think some of the groovy things about this movie is a lot of the shots are off kilter, almost like the Batman TV show.
Yeah. Like I said, you get those moments where you really kind of pick up on the scale of these things, which you don't always get in some of these movies. I mean, even as a kid, it's a guy in a suit, but that's half the fun.
I didn't realize as a kid watching this, like when the planes came in, because obviously these movies were really heavily edited for television, not just for content, but for time to, put in the commercials. I never knew where the planes came from. They didn't explain that.
Suddenly there's planes.
They just show up, yeah.
Like, did the Japanese Air Force detect Godzilla on this island? Let's just send a platoon like we normally do and see if it works.
Yeah, they obviously didn't know that the red bamboo were going on there. It's like, wait a minute.
So it's revealed at the end that the reason that they wanted Yatta to tell the captives to make a net is because Mothra needs something to carry them all away, to rescue them.
Oh, wait, she finally woke up?
Finally woke up, and she makes her way over, has a little fight with Godzilla, just enough to knock him over to get him out of the way so she can do her thing with the islanders.
Yeah, nice going. He's exhausted from fighting the condor and Ebirah.
Yeah,
now you're going to come in. You're all well. You're rested.
Well, let me tell you, this is a win for Mothra, because when she's in her moth stage, she usually ends up dead when she meets Godzilla.
Right. Yeah. The fact that she actually survives this movie.
Mothra does much better fighting as a little pupa than she does as an actual moth.
Right.
They all get in the net. Mothra picks them up. So you see the little model people at the bottom of the little model Mothra as she's flying away. And they see Godzilla there in the distance. Oh, I kind of feel sorry for him. He did help us get out. He did help us escape from the red bamboo.
And now we're going to blow him up.
They're yelling, "Run, Godzilla, run." And he's hitting his hand in his fist like he's kind of bored, like he doesn't know what to do with himself. And so I think more so just, I don't really like this island. I think I'm going to leave. And he just happens to jump off. Yeah. And it's that iconic shot that you see recycled in a few other Godzilla movies after that. Yeah.
It's a good move, man.
It is.
Yeah.
I feel bad for that actor, though. That must kill his ankles when in that big suit jumping off that height.
Just walking. Because whenever you see the feet, they're always flipping and flopping because there's no way a human foot is holding those things down. You got to have some damage going on there anyways.
But that's the end. The one guy's a fugitive because he's stolen 4 million yen.
Right. Well, he's not going to hang out in the island. He's not.
So are they going to live now happily ever after on Infinite Island with the Islanders?
I assume Ryota and Yatta will go home because their mother was looking for Yatta.
Yeah. Well, she's the one that went to the psychic. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. What's that psychic say now? Yes. Lobster salad for everyone.
So again, this one was never released theatrically in the US. And it was the first Godzilla movie to have that unfortunate distinction. It was sold to TV directly. It was released in Japan. It was a Christmas movie, as a lot of these were. Not all of them, but a lot of them were. Released in Japan December 17th in 1966. The actual date when it premiered on television is nebulous, but it's said to have premiered in 1968. Now, the company that actually bought this and showed it on American television, I think was Walter Reed, if I'm not mistaken. I could have that wrong.
Walter Reed Medical Center?
At the hospital.
Right.
The American distributor who showed this on television actually did their own dubbing on it, which is not the first or last time that this has been done. So the international version, which showed overseas, has its own dub that they made. Toho made it. So I guess it would show in places like the UK where English was the dominant language. But when it premiered on American television, that distributor made its own dub. And that's the dub that I'm familiar with. And you can't get that anymore. So on the DVD, which came out in 2004, which was titled Godzilla versus the Sea Monster, which is the US version, it had the international dub. And the reason for this is because that the TV version was heavily edited for time. So they didn't have a matching soundtrack. So they had to use the international dub for this thing. But that's the version I remember. So I usually like to see the versions of these that I saw as a kid. But because I can't see that version, I prefer the Japanese with English subtitles in this case.
Yeah, that's the way it was on HBO Max, was the subtitles.
I don't know who he played, but apparently Hal Linden TV's Barney Miller did one of the voices for the American
What?
TV version of Godzilla versus the Sea Monster. Yes.
Well, he
yes.
did work with fish. Typecasting.
Nice one. But I enjoyed this one specifically more now than I did when I was a kid. This was never one of my favorites. It came on. I was like, I'm obligated to watch it because it's Godzilla, but I never really liked it. Maybe because it was edited in a very haphazard way and it made very little sense. And I never thought that Ebirah was a very formidable challenge for Godzilla either. Although the suit is fantastic. It looks phenomenal. The work that they did in this, but I'm like, a lobster, it's not.
I know. Yeah, he's not like monstrous, but you never see his lower half, so you don't really know like what exactly is going on there.
I think the problem is like once you've seen Ghidorah, it feels like a letdown to see a giant lobster.
Yeah, it's true. But I wonder, this may have worked better as a Kong movie. It really may have.
Yeah.
I guess we'll never know.
We'll never know.
I don't know. Listen, you got island slave girls, yacht stealing bank robbers, and giant lobsters. What more do you need?
But this thing moves. It really does.
Yes.
It's not like the human story doesn't drag as much as some of the other movies.
No, because usually the other movies, it's government officials and there's an alien race and they're trying to take over and they've commandeered this,
or there's a scientist
monster.
who's just discovered something.
Yeah,
there's
so
always
these
a
are
scientist discovering a large egg in the middle of
Yeah.
the
Yeah, these are just normal people that are trying to find his brother and they stumble upon this adventure. I really like this. Like I said, I've never seen it. I'm shocked.
Yeah,
it was fun.
It's a good one. It is a good one.
It is up there soundtrack wise. Yeah. It is a lot of fun.
Yeah, so. If you're a super fan and you can get past all the inconsistencies and deficiencies in the suit,
I'm gonna have to go back and look for that now though, because I did not pick up on that.
You're right, because they don't really waste time. Once they establish that Godzilla is in the cave on the island and they release him, he fights the Ebirah and then he goes right to the red bamboo and he starts stomping around and then the extended climax starts to happen.
Yeah, but meanwhile, it's a 2-hour timer on this explosion. And at one point, they're like, there's only 30 minutes left. I'm like, wait a minute, an hour and a half has already passed? What are you people doing? Yeah, that's a good one.
Just a couple of fun facts. It's very bizarre because, Jeff, you know this, because with our artwork on every episode, you often pull foreign posters.
Yes.
Which often is not the same, completely different than the marketing that we are familiar with in the U.S. This movie was no different. They actually had Kong on the Italian poster for this movie, the final product.
Psych.
So, yeah, whoever went to go see that was sorely disappointed.
Wait a minute. He's not in here at all.
And, talk about the law of diminishing returns with sequels. This was unfortunately the last Godzilla movie to pass 3 million tickets sold at the box office, all the way up until Godzilla 1985, or
oh my gosh,
as it was released in Japan, Godzilla Returns. But they kept cranking them out year after year after this for at least another 10 years.
Listen, and we thank them for
that. Hates this film.
I read this.
Really disappointed. There were a lot of things he wanted to do that they wouldn't allow him to do. Shots kept getting cut from the film, and
that just budgetary.
Yeah, and then later in life, Toho sent him a copy of the VHS, and he said it was like opening up an old wound.
What he got was the U.S. version.
Even worse.
I was kicking myself because before this was released on DVD by Columbia in 2003, it was released by a number of mom and pop little VHS companies that may have had the rights, they may not have, because it was always very nebulous with the US versions. If, Toho had the rights, they ultimately did, but somehow all these VHS copies got out into circulation. Huh. Those VHS copies that were circulated in the 80s and 90s were of the US TV version with that original dub. And I had the VHS and I got rid of it as soon as I got the DVD in 2003. Then I actually put the thing in. I'm like, wait a second. This isn't the same movie.
Not only that VHS tape is probably highly sought after.
Oh, yeah. I went on eBay. They're like 60, $70 a pop for those.
Please, that's something.
And those were the types of VHS tapes that you would see in the bargain bin, like in Kmart for $2 or $3.
Yep, right.
And again, another indicator that the budgets were slashed were these monster battles, and these plots were no longer set in big cities where they actually had to build miniature cities. Now they were in very sparse surroundings of just trees and nature.
And little tiny people made out of plastic.
But Jun Fukuda, this was not his last rodeo with Godzilla. He went on to direct quite a few of the very well-known ones from the 70s.
And that's the thing, it's like he came in as the budgets were going down and Toho was investing less and less in it. And there's definitely an Ishiro Honda faction and there's a Jun Fukuda faction, I think, from these Showa era films, because the Jun Fukuda films are much like Masaru Sato's scores. They're more playful, they're sillier, they don't take themselves as seriously. And the Honda films were, tried in some way to establish this as a real threat, and they didn't have the same sort of sense of playfulness that the later films do.
Well, I guess it really depends on who your Godzilla is, who you grew up with.
True. That's true. Yeah.
For so many things, that's the case. You may, I really love the 70s films, from Smog Monster, as I call it, Megalon, Gigan, and Mechagodzilla, and all those movies I love. And they're very kid-friendly movies as well, which is what spoke to me as a kid. And I can say now that, the 60s movies are better movies, but I prefer the 70s ones, but that's here nor there. We'll get there in subsequent years. It's difficult to say. I'm always very sad when these discussions are over, because then it's whole nother year before we talk Godzilla again. So we're leaving the world of Godzilla, but not necessarily the world of Toho. No. After the break, we are going to be discussing the movie that Toho did make with King Kong. Rather than putting him in Ebirah, they used him for something called King Kong Escapes. Right when they were about to lose the rights, they managed to eke out another King Kong movie, and this is it. And when we come back, we'll discuss it.
Nice. Can't wait.
We'll continue with King Kong following these messages.
Now, Godzilla!
Godzilla! You can pretend Godzilla turns a mighty castle into a pile of sand.
Go do it, Godzilla!
You control Godzilla's ugly tongue. You can make him stomp, pound his tail, pretending he strikes it all in his way. You can launch Godzilla's claw for the final blow.
We did it!
What will Godzilla do next? It's up to you. Godzilla with a claw that launches. Some assembly required from the Shogun Warrior Collection by Mattel.
Hi, I'm Woodsy Owl, and I want to thank you for doing a great job in trying to stop pollution. But we need more help. We can't do it all. So, help Woodsy spread the word. Never be a dirty bird. No matter where you go, come on, you can let some people know. Give a hoot, don't pollute. Never be a dirty bird. In the city or in the woods, help keep America looking good.
Tomorrow afternoon, starting at 1, WOR-TV presents a full afternoon of action and adventure. Godzilla versus the Cosmic Monster, followed by Godzilla versus Megalon. And then, Godzilla takes on the Smog Monster.
Be careful, don't tip the waiter. When you place a freighter, they could tumble down. And you must take the blame for if you do tip the waiter. And you must tip the waiter. Use up your plane money and you're gonna lose the game. Don't tip the waiter.
The Don't Tip the Waiter game comes with everything you see here. Some assembly required.
It's colorful and fun.
We're back, and we are talking King Kong Escapes.
Is this Bad Suit Week?
Bad Suit Week. That's an understatement. I thought the Godzilla suit was bad in Ebirah, but no, this is. I have no memory that it was this bad. I was wincing at this.
I think that high definition is not a friend to this mask. This looks like a little 3-year-old made it out of stale oatmeal. It's it's very apt. It's actually very apt that this was a Rankin Bass co-production because it looks like the Bumble in a lot of places.
Bumble is cute.
Yeah, the Bumble is better.
I think it looks like the Bumble. But worse than the mask is the visible zipper on the back of the King Kong outfit. And the fact it looks like a wet dog, worse than a wet dog when it's in water. It's terrible.
Imagine what it smells like.
Oh, man.
I don't know. It was like long arms, short arms. Like, what is it? Are we like extendo arms here? What's going on?
Well, that was the same with King Kong versus Godzilla as well.
Right.
I think in the far shots, the arms were impossibly long, but then in the fight scenes, they were human sized. We did say that there was a connection between Ebirah and King Kong Escapes. Reason being is that this was the movie that Toho and Rankin and Bass did make because director Inshiro Honda came on board and special effects supervisor Eiji Surabaya was also on board. And that's what Rankin and Bass wanted for Ebirah. And they didn't get it, but they got it for this one. So they did make a movie with Toho. Now, King Kong Escapes, fascinatingly, is loosely based on the animated show that Rankin and Bass had put out in 1966 called King Kong. And that ran for 3 years. And I don't think I've ever seen an episode.
Wow. No.
Why have you?
Unaware. No, I was unaware of what this animated cartoon was.
Yeah, because even though it was a 60s show, often on those days when you'd get home from school and there'd be cartoons on after school, they would all be older shows. They'd be syndicated. But I never came across this King Kong show. And apparently it was very much in the same vein as the Godzilla Hanna-Barbera, where Kong had befriended humans and was working for the forces of good, or basically whatever the humans told him to do. It's actually got characters in the movie from the cartoon. So they were trying to tie it in with this Rankin and Bass production.
And there's a couple other connections, mostly because it's a Toho feature. Akira Takarada, who plays Nomura, was also Yoshimura the thief in
the guy with the shotgun, the shotgun guy on the yacht.
Just as a side note, he came into Toho as a part of the New Face program, which is actually how Toshiro Mifune came to Toho. Interestingly, he just passed away this year in March of pneumonia. He was 87 years old.
Oh, geez.
He outlived a lot of his peers, to be honest with you, because a lot of these actors died relatively young of lung cancer because everybody smoked.
Well, the radiation coming off these monsters probably doesn't help either.
Also, just fun FYI, he is the Tokyo Disneyland voice of Henry in the Country Bear Jamboree.
He is? Really?
He is.
Wow. That's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, he's a Toho player, right? Because these people were under contract to Toho.
Yeah.
And fittingly, he is in like a run of Godzilla movies in the 60s. He's not in every Godzilla movie, but he is in a lot of them. And he came back in the 80s and 90s as well to star in a couple of them. He had a cameo in the 2014 American Godzilla that got cut. So he was in that too.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Pretty distinctive looking. He was known as Mr. Handsome.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
He was easy on the eyes.
And he was a Jamboree Bear. Wow.
He got the girl
like
in this one too.
Yeah.
It was him and Rhodes Reason, trying to vie for that Susan's hand, and it was him that won out.
Well, she thought gorillas were dull, so let's stick with the humans. Those Kong cartoons are on YouTube, by the way.
They are, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe out of curiosity, I'm going to go and check them out.
We'll follow you out to check them out.
The relationship between Japan and Rankin Bass is, doesn't end with this, because their Videocraft company that they use to make all their stop motion specials, they farm that work out to Japanese animators who made all that stuff. So they were very much used to working in Japan.
It's a little bit later, but it's all Japanese animators on the Rankin Bass production of The Last Unicorn.
Because that does have a very anime look to it as well.
Yeah, it sure does. That is gorgeous.
But you know what's not gorgeous? Special effects in this movie. And I say that with all the love of a kaiju fan.
Well, listen, there is a certain charm to it. We just mentioned this before on the Mummy episode.
No, but there are some good. Yeah. I did take note of some good things. Okay, so
tell me, where are the good things?
Let's talk about the story and let's just tear it apart. Universal logo, first of all. Now, Christina, you have the double set. You bought this in tandem with King Kong versus Godzilla because Universal put these two movies out together. I did as well, but I've since replaced them with the Blu-ray versions.
I did not replace this with the Blu-ray.
No, you felt no need to do that? Okay.
That's him upgraded.
It's probably better that you didn't watch it in stark clarity. So these are Universal movies, and they're still owned by Universal because of the character of King Kong. So when you watch this, the opening is that Universal logo. So you think this is a first-class production. It's a Universal movie. Nope.
They hijacked that logo.
The funny thing is that they fought so hard to get the team of Honda and Surabaya. Yeah, I think the effects in the previous movie that we talked about are better than this. Yeah. The movie itself opens with the shots of the submarine underwater, and you hear the Kong roar, and that always got me excited as a kid. Because I did really love that Japanese Kong roar that they used in this and in King Kong versus Godzilla. And it's almost like the plot of King Kong 76, because they say that they're after oil, but as a sub journey, they're talking about, we're adjacent to this Mondo Island where there's a legend of Kong. Oh, that's just a legend, So this there's no
make
canon.
Any sense to me. So, but then later someone says, "Oh, my mechanical Kong, he's just like the original," and I'm like, "Well, wait, is he legend or is he real? Like, are we acknowledging that?"
To be fair, to argue, for Doctor Who here, I think that he based that mechanikong on the legend rather than an actual Kong. So I think that he was surprised as well. At some point in this movie, if I'm not mistaken, that there was a real Kong.
Even like he's like, my Kong's better than the original. He can dig. And it's like, what?
So I think Commander Nelson, played by Rhodes Reason here, an American actor who's moonlighting in a Japanese film, I think he maybe nudged the submarine driver so they would go into that underwater canyon. So they would be forced to come up on the surface and then, there's Mondo Island. We might as well go. Now that it's here.
Might as well go. He wanted to go there anyways.
What a coincidence that we just happened to end up right here.
This is what we were just talking about. The nice effect here, I think, is the hovercraft. They actually build a practical, full-size hovercraft. I thought that was pretty cool. Even though it's got, really crappy station wagon doors that they slam.
Well, it's funny because I thought that it looked and was painted like a ride vehicle at an amusement park.
Yeah.
It looks so shiny actually compared to a lot of the other effects. Like it looks freshly painted.
I think all the budget went to that hovercraft. Yeah. And then when they escape, it slowly turns around and then goes the opposite direction.
Money well spent.
And so we don't get a wall on Mondo Island. You don't get any of the classic King Kong touches. You get one islander who is yelling at them from the mountaintop, telling them to get lost. Kong makes an appearance. At least it moves. I'll say this about this movie, that it does move. And we know that he loves the ladies. So he has an instant attraction to Susan, who is, and she's played by Linda Miller. And I have to point out before we go any further, this is not her voice that you hear in the movie. She is dubbed. It's the most annoying voice that you could possibly think of. And she was very distraught by this herself, the actress, that she wasn't allowed to dub her own voice.
Yeah, why would they do that?
Because she was still in Japan. She was a model. She was living in Japan when they did the dubbing. So like all the voices are dubbed. You can see they're speaking English, but every single voice is dubbed. And it's kind of similar to like the old Bruce Lee movies where like the audio track wasn't any good. So like they're speaking in Cantonese and it's dubbed in Cantonese, right?
Gotcha. So just take another American actor and just
So like they did the dubbing in New York, I think. was where they did it, and
Yeah.
it wasn't worth the money.
And
to
there's
bring
no
her-
way that we're going to fly you from Japan to New York to do this when
Right.
we have somebody that
Yeah,
can
I guess the
just do it.
technology
Yeah.
was not there at the time to record it and ship it over. Although this is my favorite part because it is Rankin Bass. Doctor Who is his dubbed voice is Paul Frees, or as we know him, the Burgermeister Meisterburger.
No, he's the ghost host.
The Ghost Host and the Burgermeister Meisterburger.
He's Meisterburger.
But regardless, it's
a lot of
unmistakable.
guys
It's
out there going-
unmistakable. Yeah.
Yes. No. I'm like,
Because I don't think any of us had an option to watch this in its original Japanese language. On my Blu-ray, there's no other option but to watch it in its English language version.
No, and I think that's the only because the actors are speaking English. Their mouths are moving in English.
Yeah.
You can
They
see
are,
that.
but
Yeah.
I would think that in Japan they would have dubbed that in Japanese rather than have them speak
Yeah.
English.
Yeah.
So that would have been, an interesting. They're actually speaking English, but they're dubbed in I would have liked to have seen that. Actually, that would have been a novelty. But again, Linda Miller. We'll get back to her playing Susan. She's only 18 years old when they filmed
Wow.
this. So, but I guess Rankin was looking through headshots or whatever. He liked her look, and then this was, I believe, her first acting job. Not her last. She's also in The Green Slime, which is a classic of its time. But
Nickelodeon
yes,
special.
no, I'm sure Nickelodeon got their Green Slime from this movie.
Is that where they got it from?
They start to explore Mondo Island and they find Kong right away. Kong is sweet on Susan. When he picks her up in his hand, the little doll has red hair, which is funny. Her hair color keeps changing. Gorosaurus is the second monster that we get.
Oh, this is.
Well, this thing is like, it's like the Citizen Kane of kaiju compared to the Kong suit. Because I'm thinking this is what I want to see rather than this guy over here. But Gorosaurus is an attempt to hit some of that original Kong flavor because you got to have Kong fight the T-Rex, right? And that's the closest they come. Gorosaurus, even though they lost the rights to Kong with this movie, Gorosaurus came back the following year for the classic Destroy All Monsters. And I think they used him in like stock footage for some other movies too. Kong has the fight and also rips his jaw, just like the original Kong does. You get a lot of foam here because this is really interesting to me as well, that Toho is fighting for more blood in this movie because for whatever reason, Japanese TV had a lot of kid shows at the time, like your Ultraman, like your giant robot type shows where they're fighting monsters. And for whatever reason, those were very violent shows with bloodletting and dismemberments and beheadings and everything else. Toho felt that they needed to go in that direction, but Honda fought them. He's like, no, this is a kid's movie. I'm not going to have blood. So compromise was made. Foam comes out of the dinosaur's mouth when Kong tries to rip its jaws apart. So they make a hasty retreat, our humans do. Kong chases them, grabs the submarine until Susan comes back. He picks her up. He tries to bring her back to the island. This dialogue rings in my ears from when I was a kid. No, Kong. No, Kong. This is where I eat and sleep. Please, Kong.
Someone's got to stop her from saying Kong.
You know, King Kong is always losing his over a human girl. Why has no bright-eyed scientist made him like a Bride of Frankenstein type mate?
All you had to do is put a wig on that mecha King Kong and he would have been super happy. Well, why does he need nostrils on a robot?
Maybe that's how you get in to do fixes on the whatever mechanic.
His nose.
Yeah, it's got a ladder in there when you go closely.
Oh, nice. I do have a question though. Has Mechagodzilla and Mechakong ever met?
It's Mechanikong. It's not Mechakong. They weren't that cool yet in 1967.
Well, that's how I'm calling him. Mechanikong. Mecha.
They've never met.
Sorry.
No.
No. Okay. Fair enough.
And they actually, I guess Toho ran into problems using even the likeness of Kong after this. They couldn't even use Mechanikong either because of the rights and RKO and everything else. Kong puts Susan back and he begrudgingly says goodbye as the submarine goes away and they go to the UN and, share with the world their wondrous discovery. But at the same time, we are introduced to the villainous Doctor Who. And Madam X, Madam Piranha.
Madam X.
Yeah, she's credited in the credits as Madam X, but for some reason the Wikipedia page calls her Madam Piranha.
Exactly. Yes, I
love
noticed
both
that.
those names, by the way.
Yeah. Both
Madam
fit her.
Piranha.
Well, not really. She's really a good girl at heart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Played by Mi Hama, who was a James Bond girl the same year. And you only live twice. And she also did one or two other kaiju
she
films.
only acted twice.
But she is working for, and the mysterious country she represents is never named. But her country has a vested interest in Element X, which is very similar to the whatever they were digging up in Black Adam a few weeks ago. Yeah,
that's only Eternium, which is only slightly more clever than unobtainium.
So this mystery country is mining this Element X to build nuclear weapons, and Doctor Who has been contracted out by this country to get the Element X for them. And to do this, I guess only like a super being with digging with its hands is able to get at this Element X.
You can't just build like a digging machine. You got to build an actual robot monkey. And they're like, look at him go. Even Kong can't do half of that. And then he immediately falls in a hole and breaks.
No, the radiation is too much for it. It just shuts down because it can't take the Element X. Yeah,
he's extraordinary. No,
right, and she's actually always like slagging off on Doctor Who. She's like, well, you haven't done a very good job here.
No,
she was not impressed with him at all. Yeah,
I've given you enough time as it is, Doctor. Now, what's up with this guy's teeth? He has perfectly normal upper teeth, but then he talks with his lower jaw. This particular actor. Now, this actor is Hideo Yamamoto. I know the movie as Godzilla's Revenge, but it's also known as All Monsters Attack. He is the kindly toy maker who lives next door to the main kid in All Monsters Attack, who when the mother goes to work, she leaves him with the toy maker. So a much different character in that movie than he is here. His name is Doctor Who in this movie. And interestingly enough, they actually dressed him to look similar to the Doctor Who on English television.
The original, the heart now, with the cape, HU, not WHO. Completely different.
Mechanikong breaks down, so once the robot Kong breaks down, Doctor Who has no choice. He's now got to get the real Kong, right? Because for reasons unknown, he can withstand radiation that the non-living robot cannot.
Doesn't make any sense. Get a shovel.
So at the same time, the UN is granting Rhodes Reason, Captain Nelson and his team, to go back to Mondo Island on like a exploratory mission to go further into the mainland. Doctor Who beats them there. And in a nice little sequence, I have to say, he has the little fight. Kong has the fight with the helicopters. They gas him.
You know what's great about these? Like, there's a lot of stuff that's going on in this movie that's very reminiscent of what they did in Kong Skull Island, where he's literally picking up trees and throwing them at helicopters. At one point, he actually picks up the propeller.
And
uses it as a weapon, just like Kong does in Skull Island. So,
and then Ikio Sawamura, who plays an islander here, and he also played an islander in Ebirah, gets shot.
Typecast. Yeah, who shoots him? Guns him down. What the?
He's also Constable Hansuke in Yojimbo, if you guys remember.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
He's the guy who's giving the bribes.
Well, that shouldn't really be surprising to me or anyone because it's all Toho, right? It's all the same players.
Yeah. That's a fun thing if you like watch a lot of Kurosawa movies and you watch a lot of Godzilla movies, you'll see a lot of people crossing over from, the different kinds of films.
I love the attempt at giving Kong facial expressions, like how they managed to move his lip up and down.
That face can't move.
Just barely they managed to move the lip up and down, like when he's thoughtful.
he's contemplative.
But I'm impressed that they got
very hard.
Yeah, I'm impressed that they got both eyelids move up and down at the same time.
Other than the eyelids, not much else moves.
So Kong is captured by Doctor Who and brought to the North Pole. That's where they're digging for the Element X. With some kind of slee-stack pyramid, they end up hypnotizing him, and they give him earbuds to put him down into the crater.
A little prescient there, huh?
Yeah.
Apple's going, that's a good idea. Like those things right in your ears.
And this is a pretty impressive set, because you can tell that this at least has money, because the set, like, dwarfs the actor in both the Mechanikong suit and the Kong suit when he's underground and he's digging. If anything, the sets are pretty cool in this movie.
That's where all the money went.
But
that and the hovercraft.
And so go back to Captain Nelson and Susan and the team on the island. They find the islander who's been shot, and Susan's first reaction is to scream when she sees she's a nurse.
She's not a good nurse. She was threatening those guys on the submarine with castor oil. So
Yeah, she was. You naughty boys, I'll get my castor oil.
Yeah, I think that's what Tom and Jerry used to be threatened with.
And she's telling off Nomura earlier for not coming to her when he like hit his head and he has a tiny bit of blood that needs a bandage.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, she was in full on mom mode right there.
And somehow, by looking at the broken branches and some of the ether residue, Nelson works out that it's his old friend, Doctor Who, who's done this.
No one else can break a branch like this except Doctor Who.
And he says, it must be my old friend, that international Judas, Doctor Who.
Say no more.
That's actually when he does his Las Vegas residency. That's how he's introduced. Ladies and gentlemen, that international Judas, Doctor Who.
I think half the budget went to Madam X's wardrobe. How much did this lady pack? Every time we saw her, she was wearing a different outfit. And she apparently knew how to party. Johnny Walker Black. I did like the fact that they were like, these two, we can't have these two fighting in Tokyo. And I'm like, yeah, because it's too expensive. Special effects won't cover the budget. Yeah.
But Kong has so much so has the ladies on his mind that I think that's how he sees Mechanikong. When he's being hypnotized and he's looking at the robot, he sees it as a gorilla. I'm sure they should have had it with lipstick and like with a bow and a hair.
Right. Just slap a wig on it and leave him be. Leave him be. Where's Kong? He's on Mondo Island. He's rocking it.
Guys, he's looking for some companionship.
Yes, he's
very
lonely. He's lonely. Every time someone shows up, they just want to fight him. He's a lover, not a fighter.
Kong. Doctor Who gets the idea that he needs Susan and he needs Nomura to control Kong. So they use some subterfuge to pick them up off the submarine. And Nomura whispers to Susan, I don't think they're Japanese. I don't trust them. He's right. Next thing you know, they're in the North Pole as well. But they don't really get a chance to test that theory, whether or not they can control Kong, because I think it's the radiation again, because he's down there with the Element X and Doctor Who's yelling at him through the earbuds. And Kong suddenly goes into a trance, then snaps out of it. And so I think maybe the radiation was shorting out I don't know what happened, but
you're already overthinking this.
Regardless, Kong escapes, hence the title. King Kong escapes.
It takes that long for the title to kick in.
It's mid-movie as well. It's not even at the climax. Right. He breaks out of the mountain, jumps into the water, and Mechanikong can't follow him because he's a robot. He would short him out.
Up. Yeah.
And the next thing you know, he's in Tokyo. It's like, is that a natural swimming progression from the North Pole down all the way down, specifically down to Tokyo? So this is where we get the final battle, if you want to even call it that. It's a race to climb up the tower at the end.
Chasing, yeah.
And there's a troubling overuse of the word Oriental in this movie as well, I noted.
Yeah. And Nelson calls X your typical Oriental Matahari,
which is weird.
And then
and typical is the worst word of that sentence.
And then he declines to be seduced by her apparently, but then she comes to rescue him anyway. And the other two kind of give him a look like, "What have you been up to while we've been freezing to death?"
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Both Nomura and Nelson are very handsy with Susan throughout. So watching this,
she's running into their arms nonstop.
Yeah, like who is she supposed to be with? Which one? And then once she's in the freezer, I'm like, okay, he's the boyfriend.
Right. And who even says something about how they're very affectionate with each other. Right?
Yeah. Just get back to the Kong fight. Stop giving me human relations.
It's like, are we supposed to care about this love triangle?
No. As a kid, you're like, I don't want to see this. I want to see some monster on monster action.
We talk about a movie that could probably be trimmed down. I haven't watched this in a while, and I was like, this is an hour and a half.
Right.
Like
Three-quarters of it is just her going, Kong!
Yeah.
Kong!
No, the climax is really like that whole thing on the tower goes on for a long time.
There's no battle. He pushes him, he falls over, and he falls apart halfway down.
Yeah, it's sort of funny because it's not really like they're fighting, and it looks like the Mechanikong is just trying to get away from him.
Yes, he's like, I don't want any part of you. I don't want to be in this movie. I don't know why I have nostrils.
No, because he's afraid he's going to be assaulted by this lonely ape. He's like, stay away from me, man.
He's like pushing him down, and Kong is chasing him all the way to the top. They're not really fighting.
No, there's no fight.
Let me tell you, Kong does not need a wig or lipstick on this robot to make it happen.
No, listen. He's easy like that. And he's just watching the men fight over Susan. He's like, all right, that's how you treat women. Okay, let's go.
The Japanese runtime is actually like 8 minutes longer.
Is it really?
Yeah.
A couple more Kong shields?
The US release is 96 minutes and the Japanese release was 104. So I don't know what was cut out for the American release.
Well, yeah, I want to point out, I saw online, there's a bunch of promo shots of Kong, Mechanikong, and Gorosaurus in the Arctic. So I don't know if there was another fight, how they got the Gorosaurus up there because he was already dead, or if that was just, some promotional shots.
Yeah, just a promotional shot. Yeah.
But it was like, wait a minute, I didn't see that part of the movie at all. Like, what's going on there?
Mechanikong has Susan in his hand when he goes up to the tower. And Doctor Who is actually talking to Kong through Mechanikong, as if Kong can understand English. Because he says at one point, I'll drop the girl if you don't go back to the ship. They're still trying to get Kong to go back to the North Pole to dig the element X.
Right.
So I think Kong just hears, wah, 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 wah.
That would explain a lot.
So, but yeah, as you say, finally, and there's a really funny shot when you do see the model that they're actually the two suited men move slightly, the top of the tower. And then you see like a point of view shot from the ground and the tower's like frantically going back and forth, like somebody's shaking a toy.
That's not what happened.
That's not what happened. But as you say, Mechanikong finally falls down and just breaks apart immediately. So not made quite as well as Mechagodzilla was just a few years later. But then we get Kong as, this is the propeller scene where he grabs the propeller and I think this is a cute scene when he's running down the dock and the car's going along with him that everybody's supposed to be in. I thought that was a pretty cool visual. And he egregiously kills Doctor Who was pinned in a boardroom by probably his own desk. And the blood capsules just pour out of his mouth.
He'll be back.
And of course, it takes Rhodes Reason, the American, to give that last line. I believe it's him. I think he's had enough of what we call civilization.
Bomb, bomb, bomb.
Yeah. I hate to say this is not Ishiro Honda's best effort.
No.
He tried.
He did.
He tried.
Looking at the Japanese title, it was not a translation of King Kong Escapes, actually called King Kong's Counterattack in Japan.
Oh, well, the Americans don't know what counterattack means. We had to change that.
It was actually released in U.S. theaters, so it wasn't one of these straight-to-TV deals. It made $3 million at the U.S. box office, U.S.-Canada box office. So in North America, it made $3 million. It was paired as a double feature with a Don Knotts movie, which indicates how seriously Universal took this. The shakiest gun in the West.
Movie?
The shakiest gun in the West.
I hate to say that, but that's a great double feature for a 6-year-old. I would have been all in on that.
They actually reviewed this movie in the New York Times. Can you believe that? That they actually gave it column space?
Was it slow news day?
Vincent Canby actually had to sit through this and review it. The Japanese are all thumbs when it comes to making monster movies like this. What? He says, I take offense to that.
Wow,
yeah, me too.
That's a slap across the face.
Rude.
Wow, all thumbs.
Takeshi Kimura, who wrote this, he also wrote Matango, which you remember the mushroom movie, if you guys ever saw that one.
Yep.
And he wrote Frankenstein versus Baragon, and he wrote The War of the Gargantuas. Ooh. So he actually did a lot of stuff for Toho.
And Kong was actually written into the first draft of Destroy All Monsters, but Toho could not work it out with RKO, so they couldn't use Kong again.
Destroy All Monsters also written by Takeshi Kimura. So he was probably trying to have some carryover from
him in there.
His film. Yeah.
Can we get the really crappy suit, though? They're like, no.
Really, this is a question for the ages. What suit is worse? This one or the one in King Kong versus Godzilla?
Yeah, they are both. I don't get it. I don't get it. I mean, Willis O'Brien's little 16-inch maquette, and stop motion has more personality and emotion than this thing.
I think it's
just.
I mean, for me, I think the problem is not the suit so much as the performance, where he just clearly looks like a human. He doesn't look like a gorilla moving, whereas, the actors who play Godzilla, they move in a certain way because they're trying to move like this lizard, right? But this just looks like literally a guy running around.
No, you're right. That is a very astute observation. Yeah. And again, even as a kid, you're like, his arms are long, they're short. It's just, there's no consistency, no personality whatsoever.
They were at least able to use the suit again, if not the name Kong. It showed up in a couple of episodes of Go Green Man, which is one of those countless giant robot shows that were produced on Japanese television, and he was just referred to as Gorilla.
Was he a gorilla?
In the 90s, when they were making, they made Godzilla movies from the 80s, 90s into the millennium. At one point in 92, they came out with Godzilla versus Mothra, but originally that was supposed to be a remake of King Kong versus Godzilla. And they couldn't, again, get the rights to use Kong. They tried to use mechanikong instead, but they couldn't get the rights to that either because it was a likeness of Kong. But the story, what would have been that 90s version of King Kong versus Godzilla, actually sounds very reminiscent of Fantastic Voyage. So once it was rewritten to feature mechanikong rather than the real Kong, the robot had injectors in its fingers. It would inject human beings in vehicles into Godzilla during their battle, and they would try to beat Godzilla from within while he was fighting this mechanical robot, which sounds like a great setup, right? But
that's crazy.
It never was to be. Oh, Rhodes' Reason. I knew the film was lousy before it was made, but I couldn't. But I couldn't turn down a trip to Japan.
Wow.
He called director Inchiro Honda a hack later.
Ooh.
No.
Slap number 2. Wow.
This wasn't his best work, but he was not a hack.
And I have to give credit where it's due. We were complaining about the very irritating dubbed voice of Susan. That was actually done by voice actress Julie Bennett, whose many credits include Cindy Bear, first of all, from the Yogi Bear series, Looney Tunes, Magilla Gorilla, Mr. Magoo, Huckleberry Hound, Quick Draw McGraw, Banana Splits, Funky Phantom, Captain Caveman, Scooby's All-Star Laugh Olympics, Real Ghostbusters, and she was Aunt May in the 90s Spider-Man animated series.
Wow. That's a hell of a resume right there.
Yeah. Wow. That was only a partial resume.
Woo.
It went on and on and on.
Banana Splits.
So there you go. That is our Thanksgiving episode come to a close, sadly.
It is sad.
Yeah.
We look forward to this every year. And now it's over.
These episodes, we didn't give buckets to Ebirah, and I hesitate to do it for King Kong Escapes either. They transcend buckets, these movies. As a kid, I was unconcerned with how terrible the suit was or the effects. Didn't matter to me. I just wanted to see some monster mayhem. And this movie gives it to you.
That is funny that you say that, because I literally wrote Silly Sunday Afternoon Monster Mayhem. That's exactly what this movie is.
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen it, it's time to take your Thanksgiving leftovers, make a big messy sandwich, and sit down.
I like where you're going with this.
And watch a monster movie.
Yeah, have fun with it, laugh at it. That's what it's there for. So
Mom's out making Black Friday sales, curl up in front of the TV.
So again, thank you for listening. Next week, I know it's a tough act to follow, our annual Monster Marathon, but we are coming back next week. And we are delving back into the world of mysteries. This one's on HBO Max. See How They Run. And this has been getting some very positive notices, so we'll see if we agree. And along with See How They Run, we're pulling a classic mystery out. Could it be the first movie based on a board game? Do you think I misspeak when I say that?
Wow, you're putting my feet to the fire. I'm going to say yes.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, if nobody has guessed already what I'm about to divulge.
You want to give me a clue?
There's your clue in itself. Clue.
Well, which ending are we going to get?
I don't know. That's a good question.
You get all of them.
This is a very storied. I cannot wait to talk about this because this is a very storied film.
So the video releases, they show them one after another.
Clue, along with See How They Run. And that's next week.
Yes.
All of us really wish you a happy Thanksgiving and happy holidays. And if you've just come for the first time attracted to the name Godzilla in our description, welcome. We have a lot of other episodes for you to dive into.
You forget sometimes that this could very well be someone's first episode. Listening.
It could be. It could be. Yeah.
And if you've listened to us every week, thank you very, very much.
Yeah.
Yes. Happy Thanksgiving. And here we go. Right into the holiday.
Bye, everybody.
Jingle bell all the way. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, everybody. If you like what you just heard, be sure to follow TMI Confessionals of the Nerd Kind on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or whatever you listen to your favorite podcasts on. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and then share it with your fellow movie nerd friends. It means the world to us and helps our listenership grow.
You can also find us on all of the socials, Instagram and Twitter at TMI_podcast 2018. We're on Facebook and YouTube as well. Just look for the Popcorn Bucket.
You can help support this show by visiting our TeePublic page for some TMI branded goodies such as hoodies, t-shirts, mugs, and stickers. TeePublic.com/TMI Confessionals, all one word.
A 5-star review would be incredibly nice as well. I'm just saying.
Thanks again for listening. We truly appreciate you. Be sure to come back next week. We'll save some popcorn for you.
That's just butter to keep him away from the shoreline. Giant lobsters cannot handle butter. They're like, I'm out, dude.
No Kong.